PJ and Riley, before you guys start, are from GitLab. They're here to give us an overview of DevOps. The title of the presentation is, let's see, uh, using GitLab for work and play. So it seems to be a fun presentation here. And yep. And so, PJ, Riley, the floor is yours, guys. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. All right, so I just clicked share my screen. Can you all see it? Is that a thing that happens on Teams? I want to make sure I'm
Yep,
doing this all the right way.
yep,
Perfect.
all good.
Okay, so yeah, this is a very light presentation because there are two of us who are going to talk about some great things. Riley will be talking more about the getting hired and the working in DevOps companies, and I'm talking about how I use GitLab for my personal projects and how I use it at work. So this is rather than a history of DevOps or how to do DevOps at work or what tools you need for DevOps. This is more of an insight into the day to day of how I use it and how I use DevOps ideas and practices in order to make my work better. So first off, there I am in my best possible headshot. I'm PJ Metz. I'm an Education Evangelist at GitLab, and my job is to do exactly what I'm doing now, is actually to talk to educators and students who are learning about coding or anything involved in the tech industry, really, and talk to them about how GitLab is beneficial or how I use GitLab in order that they have exposure and experience with something that is used all over the place. We have banks, we have telephone companies, we have big enterprise companies that need a DevOps solution that GitLab offers. And so if you want to work at these companies that are using DevOps and are creating DevOps solutions for their customers, then GitLab is a great tool to know and a great platform to get familiar with. So I live in Orlando, Florida. So I always love when I talk to Seattle. I've done a few things with City U. I am on the opposite corner of the continental United States from y'all. I'm into poetry and music. I'm a drummer and education stuff in general. I was a high school teacher for 11 years before this. And I'm really into synthwave and music that's made today, but sounds like it's from the 80s. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Metz Around. If you want to check me out on GitLab, my work username is PJ Metz. And if you want to see me on Twitch, where I stream once in a while, that's also Metzing Around. So my personal work. So I have a personal GitLab account and I have a work GitLab account. My personal one is where I build Twitter bots. And this has been sort of the way that I got into coding. I started out building a ASP.NET website with a friend of mine. And then as I started learning JavaScript more, I found a tutorial for how to make a Twitter bot that responds to people. And a friend of mine sent me this tweet that was about Shania Twain. And they were like, if I was Shania Twain, I would tweet "Let's go, girls" every day. And for those of you who aren't big 1990s country pop music fans, Shania Twain was a country pop music artist in the late 90s. And she has a great song that starts with "Let's go, girls." And it's like you hear it and you got to dance and you get excited. So I built a Shania bot. And Shania bot every day tweets, "Let's go, girls" at noon using code. And if you tag Shania and ask if they're impressed, she replies with, "That don't impress me much." And I just built this with code, and I got really excited about it because I was enjoying the code world and the fact that I could connect to an API and make something happen. I was like, so this just works. And my friend was like, yeah, it just fires when you tell it to. And I was like excited. So I went and I made all the rest of these afterward. A Mariah bot, Badiana Grande, first of the month, that when it's the first of the month, it tweets the music video for the song "First of the Month" by Bone Thugs and Harmony. It's a deep cut, but it's a great song. Look it up. But this one in the middle is actually the one I'm most proud of. I set up my personal Twitter account to every day tweet at Mountain Dew asking them to sponsor me. And we actually hit 365 days of tweeting at Mountain Dew a few days ago. So that's 1 year of annoying some poor social media manager that works for Pepsi. But all of this code is stored on GitLab in a repo here. All of it is JavaScript, just several JavaScript files. And really the only thing that runs is one file that says, hey, require all those other files. And I use GitLab to manage all of this. And I use GitLab to keep track of what I'm doing and to have version control and to have some CI/CD that automatically deploys for me. And that's my big project is my divas, all my little bots that I make that fire automatically. And I get really excited about things like that. It's a fun project for me that lets me use code, that lets me get familiar with GitLab and with the products that work with GitLab, like Heroku, where they're living on the cloud. And that's what I do for fun. My workflow with that, and when we talk about DevOps, what we're talking about is like a cultural style of work. And when we talk about DevOps, we're talking about things like collaboration between teams. And we're talking about considering the last step in making a product at the beginning. So the old way of making software, and Ali and I were talking about 90s internet and tech culture before we got started. The old way of making software was you have an idea, you build that idea, you test that idea, and then you ship that idea out in the form of floppy disks or CDs, and you literally had to go buy a physical copy and bring it home. So when we talked about shipping a product, we were literally using the postal service to do that. And it was fine. It got products to people, but it was hard to get an update. It was hard to make sure that everything was running correctly after it's been shipped, because once it's shipped to the customer, you have to get them to update it in very specific ways. And it's not automatic like it is now. When you go to sleep, if your phone's on automatic update, all those apps there are going to automatically update every single day. Facebook pushes like 3 updates a day sometimes. Security, minor fixes, performance fixes, things like that. And DevOps is what makes that possible. It's a system and a collection of tools and platforms that allows your developers to make software faster. It's about automation. It's about a culture of considering things like security early on. Because if you wait till the end to think, hey, is this hackable? What happens if it's really hackable and you never once considered whether the way you were writing was secure or not? So when I talk about my workflow personally, as I hit my microphone, when I talk about my workflow personally, I'm either working in VS Code on my local machine and then using source control Git and pushing new versions to my repo in GitLab. I'm using Gitpod, which integrates with GitLab. There's actually a button I'll show you later where you can just open Gitpod, and Gitpod is an instance of VS Code in the browser, so you don't actually have to do anything locally. It's really amazing. I'm, of course, using GitLab, which has an integrated web IDE as well, if you don't want to work locally, if you don't want to use Gitpod. And finally, I'm storing things and I'm running my bots from Heroku. And I use these tools all together to make my bots work best. If I notice a change needs to be made and I can do it real quick, I'm going to use the web IDE on GitLab. If I want to spend a little more time on it, I might go in Gitpod. But if I really want to take my time and I want to mess around with a bunch of different versions and try a bunch of different things, that's my local repo. And that's where I'm mostly testing out a new feature or trying something new. I consider this kind of my, not staging environment, but like, I'm messing around and I'm going to break a lot of stuff while I'm working on it. So like I said, I'll take you through my, my repo here real quick. And let's take a look at just something simple. Let's look at my Kickstart right here. And this is the one that controls my personal Twitter bot and lets me scream at a soda company every day. So it's just straight JavaScript. The viewer here, you can change the way this all looks. You can change the sort of the syntax colors and all that stuff. I'm not going to go through and teach you how I made this code. If you want, honestly, you can go and like take all of this and make a Twitter bot. And I've got a couple of tutorials on dev.to about how to make a Twitter bot. But let's say I see something on here and I'm like, oh, here's a comment I put in here when I was testing some source control stuff earlier. I was having trouble pushing to my repo and I was like, well, that's a problem. So now I've got this fake comment in here. Well, I realized it worked, so I need to fix that. So I'm going to open it up in my web IDE. And for quick fixes like that, it's really simple. Just open it up. Here's all the file trees here. This is very similar to like Atom or VS Code. You've got a file tree on the left. You've got an editor on the right. And I'm going to go down here and I'm just going to go ahead and delete line 52 because I don't need that fake comment anymore. And notice as soon as I made that change, right here, create commit lit up. The web IDE just knew I made a change to my code. And that's one of the things that's really cool in GitLab is you don't have to know any Git commands for your source control. It can be all buttons and clicks and stuff. So if I want to create a commit and I want to change that, it asks me what my commit message is. Removed extra comment. I know that I don't need a new branch for this. It's not a feature. It's nothing too intense. So I'm going to commit that to main. And when I commit it, it goes boop. You did it. And now if we look, that's gone there. We head back to the repo. And we look in Kickstart again. And it's automatically gone. This is where the CI/CD kicks in. A CI/CD is continuous integration, continuous deployment, or continuous development. And CI/CD kind of automates a lot of different things. So rather than now saying, okay, I removed that comment, or let's say I added a feature and I want it to be live on Twitter, I would have to push that to my production. Well, with CI/CD, it happens automatically, and that's done with a file that's included in the repo that you write in YAML and you tell it what to do. In my case, this is the really important script here, and I treat it like you would any command line, and I just tell it, hey, these are instructions from Heroku. Here's what Heroku needs to know. It needs to know what my app name is, needs to know my API key, and I add some extra stuff here, skip cleanup, because sometimes in CI/CD there's this cleanup process that can take some time, and it just lickety split automatically pushes it to Heroku. So if I go here and I look inside my pipeline, this is what's happening behind the scenes when that pipeline runs. A whole bunch of stuff that I can't read. But basically what happens at the end, I get this little thing, job succeeded. And if I go to Heroku now and I log into Heroku, I can look and see that my app has been updated and it's running live on Heroku. And now if we went and tweeted at, let's say, oh, we're going to tweet at Shania. We're going to see if she yells at us. And hopefully I'm not doing this too quick. All right. Shania bot. Am I impressing students in Seattle? I am. Listen, I do a decent amount of these presentations. I'm actually terrified that this isn't going to work and it's going to break in front of everyone, which will be very exciting for all of us. But let's see what happens. We're doing it live. We'll give it a second. I'm going to give that a second because sometimes it takes a little bit. And it won't necessarily show up live immediately. Shania, we did it. We did it. That's me using GitLab personally. I'm the only person in this repo. No one else is coming in here. Although they could, you could make a merge request. Hey, I want to add this bot. Cool, let's talk about it. Hey, I think this could be cleaned up this way. It's technically open source. But it's just me. So let's talk about the way I use it at work, because that's a little bit more important when I'm talking to y'all about what you're going to be doing with GitLab. So the work at GitLab, we do what's called dog fooding, where we use our own product to make our own product, and we use our own product in that process. I also call it drinking our own champagne. And we are constantly using GitLab to collaborate and to create places where we can plan out what we're doing next, and we call those issues. And there are issues in other source control as well. GitHub has issues, Bitbucket, has issues. But my work, what I do day to day, is I'm making content. I'm doing lectures like this. I'm making live streams. I'm updating our website or our handbook or a slide deck. I'm going to events, and that means we're coordinating travel. We're writing presentations. We're writing papers. We're applying. Maybe we're doing some outreach. We've got marketing ops where we build email campaigns. We've got workshops that I build where I can teach you how to build a Twitter bot in Python, or I can teach you how to build a Magic 8-Ball bot or a Twitter hashtag checker. All of this stuff we build inside of GitLab. And what that looks like are working in these issues. So let me show y'all. Here's outreach. And inside of here are issues. So every time you've got, this is a subgroup, and I'm a member of the education program. Really, everyone at GitLab has access to this. And inside of here, we created a project called Outreach. And inside that project, we have issues. And issues is where the collaboration happens. So, for instance, here's y'all right here. This is where Riley and I started planning what we were going to do for this presentation. And I included some emails that I got. I included some information that they might need to know. I've got the link to join the Teams meeting. And Riley knew, because he works at GitLab, all the information he needs for joining us here today, and everything he needed to know about was going to be right here in this issue, because that's how we work. And having one place to go, as opposed to, hey, I messaged you on Slack, check your email. And the email's like, hey, don't forget, inside that issue, we've got this you need to, and there's one place. Yes, we have Slack. Yes, we have email, but GitLab knows, and what we try and tell people who are using it, the benefit is that you've got all of your collaboration in one place. Now, I don't have to write code for my day-to-day job. I'm not a developer. I'm not building the website, or I'm not building the product or anything like that. I'm not an engineer by any stretch of the imagination. But if I am writing some, for instance, Markdown that we're going to use in a static website, I can do that directly from GitLab as well. I can create a static website that we'll use to give information to people about what our team does. For instance, the Devops education guide, which is something that my manager and I created. And this is all written in Markdown. If we want to update it, we just go into the files, and I'll go back and show you that in 1 second. And we keep this updated for people because we want to be able to offer resources to people who want to, say, run a workshop about courseware as code, which is a cool thing that's available that can help make using GitLab for education easier. The student contributor workshop, which, notice there's not a link there right now, but that's teaching students about contributing to open source. We build this website, and let's say we notice a problem. The HTML gets a little messed up and something's a little wonky. We're about to apply some CSS to this a little later on, so it doesn't just look like a blank PowerPoint presentation. But when we want to make those changes, we create an issue, say what change we want to make is, and then we create a merge request. We call them merge requests when you're taking code and changing it and pushing it back into the main branch. You create a merge request right from that issue, and we start editing in that branch that was just created as part of that merge request. And all of it happens in one platform. We never have to take it out of Jira and take it to GitHub and work there. We never have to take it out of GitHub and put it into something else. We don't have 8 different tools. We have one platform where we do everything. And it makes collaboration just so much easier, so much easier. I was going to show you the Markdown files. So GitLab has a static site generator that can automatically work. Let's go in here. Let's go in course, and let's talk about here. Yes. So this is just written in Markdown, and this was the page I was just showing y'all. So we write this in Markdown. We use Jekyll static site for this one, and then it makes that website that I was just showing y'all before. And that's automatically done with a few steps that GitLab provides pretty straightforwardly. But really, that's how we tend to work, and that's what we tend to do at GitLab. A lot of it is for people who aren't writing code, and there's a lot of jobs in tech where writing code is not your main job, but knowing how to code can be really beneficial to getting that job. We basically use it for mostly collaboration, mostly working together on issues about, hey, where are we going to present to? Or we are planning for an event in Ireland, and that is here. You can see it's confidential. So I'm not going to show it to you because it's confidential. But that's where my boss and I are planning this large trip to an education conference in Dublin. We're planning vendors. We're planning how we're going to get swag there. We're planning what we're going to do there. We're planning the small presentation that we have time for. And we do all of that inside GitLab. So it's not just this app that lets you make websites or lets you make iPhone apps or Android apps or whatever app you're building. It's really about making it easier for people to work together, because that's what's going to make software get delivered faster. if you've got a bunch of people who are the best developers that ever lived, but they don't work together well, then you're never going to ship anything. But if you can increase collaboration and reduce the friction that comes from working together and handoffs and, hey, I finished this code, it's your turn, stuff like that. The DevOps lifecycle is what makes that a bit easier. That is my part of the presentation. Like I said, it's a very brief insight into this. I am super happy to talk to anyone who wants to DM me or message me on LinkedIn or whatever, and I'll talk to you more about all this. I'll show you some of my tutorials, stuff like that. But for now, we're going to hear from Riley, where it is 7 in the morning in Australia, the poor fella who's here for all of us. And Riley's going to talk to y'all about his job and how he gets people into this industry. So Riley, I'm going to stop sharing, and now it's your turn, my friend.
Thank you. It's actually pretty reasonable. It's only 5 to 10 in the morning, so we're okay. However, I do need someone to make me an organizer or a presenter so I can share my screen, please. Otherwise, you're just going to be looking at my head the entire time, which I feel bad for anyone that has to do that. Awesome.
You can present now.
Thank you very much. I need to quickly do permissions on this very quickly. Sorry, give me a second. I should actually be working. So just give me 2 secs. I need to quickly update this. Okay, maybe it's not going to work. Maybe we'll just have to, I feel like I'm going to have to drop off the call and come back. By the time I do that, it will take
Riley,
too long.
if I have it, I can share my screen and I can show it, and then you can just advance slides. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, is that okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's just in that issue.
Okay.
GitLab issue, there we go. Collaboration in live, real time. I like it.
That's right. Let me go ahead and share my screen again for that.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry about that. I should have known that was coming with Max.
All right, and we are down.
Link at the top.
Here, perfect.
Oh yeah, well that one, that works too. You beauty. Oh no, now you get to see my terrible, terrible joke. Attempted a joke. So I thought that was a really great name when I was going through and proofreading this last night. I now read it and I'm like, well, maybe it's not great. Anyway, it's there. So DevJobs or DevOps and Jobs in 2022. We're here now. Next slide, please. So my name's Riley. I'm one of the tech recruiters or senior tech recruiters here at GitLab. Just a couple of quick bits about me. I've been with GitLab for 9 months now. I joined late last year, just before we IPO'd, which is a very exciting time to be here. I live in a place called Noosa in Queensland in Australia, which you probably won't know where that is, but it is a beachy town here in Australia. I've been recruiting in DevOps since about 2014, which is about when it really kind of hit Australia and became a larger thing from just being an infrastructure thing. I personally love boating. I love food, both eating it and cooking it too, but preferably eating it. I'm going out for Italian tonight, which I'm very, very excited about. And I also really like craft beers. I am lucky where I live. There are 3 craft breweries near me. And my favorite one I've tried so far has been, sounds weird, like Rosella and chili beer. And Rosella is this, I think it's African herb or something, African fruit, something like that. But it was delicious. It was very nice. So that's my favorite one so far. And last thing I will quickly apologize for is obviously I'm Australian and some of my Aussie slang slips into my sentences sometimes. I'm very sorry. If you need a clarification, bang it in the chat or something and I'll come back to it and tell you what it means later. But I also have a habit of speeding up what I say and shortening things, which makes it very hard to follow along sometimes. So if I'm doing that, please tell me and I will try and slow myself down. Next slide, thank you. So, excuse me, the first probably big thing I wanted to get across, and PJ touched on a bunch of this, is finding a job in DevOps is not just about DevOps. It is absolutely everywhere. So whether it be in the actual tooling itself or a culture shift in the company towards it, it's happening everywhere in different ways, shapes and forms, and there's different companies at different maturity levels. You don't need to know everything before you start. If that's what if you are worried about that, you don't need to know everything before you start. In fact, it's actually good sometimes if you haven't, because the company you join, GitLab could be one of those, can teach you how they do things and teach you kind of best practice from an actual engineering and doing things perspective, not necessarily what you read in a book or what you do in a course. So don't feel like you have to know everything. When it comes to talking about finding a role, I talk to people all, as you can imagine, talk to people all day about joining GitLab, and prior to GitLab, other companies that I was working with. You would be amazed at how many people don't really know what they want to do, or haven't thought about what they want to do, or what they're good at, or what they like doing. So as basic as some of these things sound, I would really strongly recommend you take time to think about it and put some thought into it. So you can try and figure out what you like doing. You don't know what you don't know, so you don't need to have an answer of what you're going to be doing in 5 or 10 years' time. But figure out what you like doing now and then work from that. So some of the questions you can ask yourself are what are you good at? What do you like doing? Have you worked in bigger or smaller environments before and had a preference for one or the other? Do you naturally lean towards kind of faster paced environments and like doing a lot of things really quickly, or are you more of a methodical person? You like taking your time, thinking things through and working in a slower paced environment? Things like that, where you can think about different environments. Also with jobs, again, PJ touched on this earlier, but there are so many different types of jobs in DevOps. It's not even funny. There are technical ones where you're a software engineer or an infrastructure engineer and writing code. There are non-technical ones where you're a business analyst or a project manager or an iteration manager, or over time becoming into a people manager, where you're actually not a coding or technically focused at all, but you're enabling people to do their jobs and do that right. So there's a lot of different things you can do. An easy way to kind of get, well, I shouldn't say easy way, but one of the ways to kind of move into the DevOps space is considering internships or work experience. We don't do work experience at GitLab. We do internships. I think we've just filled our last internship for the time being at the moment, but a lot of companies will do internships. I would highly recommend looking at those and considering those. And also be open to trying different types of roles. It is very, very, very unlikely you will find the role that you want straight out of the gate. If you do, that's awesome for you and very lucky. But in my experience, most people will try 2 or 3 different things before they find what they really love, or a company that they really love working for. It takes time to find what's good for you. Can you please? Thank you very much. Oh, look at that! I don't even say anything, PJ. You're on it. So it isn't just tech. It isn't just tech that's important. And maybe even more so at the stage that you're all at, coming out of uni or college. Sorry, coming out of study. These 4 things I would say are probably the 4 biggest things that I look for beyond the skills and beyond the tech. And arguably it's 50-50 usually. We can have the strongest technical person in the world. If they don't have these 4 things, then we, generally speaking, won't actually progress them or hire them. So the first big one is empathy. A lot of people talk about empathy these days, but the ability to understand how others feel, put yourself in their shoes, and not even just people within your team, but the users of whatever you're building or the customers, being able to understand what they can see and what they're experiencing is really important. Initiative. Generally, companies, again, especially at your level, will not want to hire people that wait for instruction to do something. If you find a problem, think about solutions and then go back to the person you need to talk to about the solution, not necessarily just the problem. Again, it's okay if you don't think the answer might be right. Have a go at trying to solve it and then take it to the manager. If nothing else, it's a great experience for you to give it a go. Communication. This arguably would be one of the most important things, broadly speaking, across the entire industry at the moment, especially with the push to going remote. I know at GitLab, it's a really important trait to have. We will reject people that don't have good communication skills or can communicate clearly and concisely, because so much of it now is done by writing or by video calls like this, where you miss a lot of the visual cues that you get in person. So you can't see my body language. You can't tell how I'm feeling, or if I'm tensing up a little bit when you talk or whatever it might be. So communication and being able to clearly and concisely articulate yourself is incredibly important. Being very methodical, which I'm working on personally. And then the final thing is collaboration or collaborating. Again, it's okay to be someone who prefers to work by themselves or work on individual tasks and be really good at that. There are people that are super successful that are very like that, and there are certain environments that they thrive within, and there are some environments that they don't. But even if you're someone that is like that, or you think you're going to tend to kind of be down more that path, you need to be able to work with other people and collaborate on ideas. So if you have an idea of how to do something, and someone has a different idea of how to do something, being able to work with them to find a solution that works for both sides and ultimately is the best solution for the customer or the user or whoever you're trying to get the result or the solution for. Next slide, please. Boom. Thank you very much. And then you can click one more if that's okay, please. Thank you very much. So in terms of tangible things that will help you get a role in DevOps, I'm hoping these aren't too bog standard or things you've read or heard before. Some of them might be really obvious, but also really, really important. First big one is networking. It doesn't need to be in the traditional sense of networking back even pre-COVID days where you would go to a meetup event and everyone's handing out business cards and talking, all that type of stuff. Yes, that is one way to do it, but you can also do it through virtual events. You can do it through my next point, which is starting to contribute to open source projects, but you can do it through that. You can do it through working on contributing to the industry, writing blogs and commenting on things, networking on LinkedIn. There are so many different ways that you can build your network when it comes to that. Kind of leads into my second point, which is starting to contribute to open source projects and GitLab included. And I deliberately put that there because I can give you a very real example of someone who is a contributor to the GitLab project, GitLab product. They have submitted I don't know how many merge requests and they've been approved. And we actually got in touch with them through GitLab because they were contributing so much to a certain part of the product. We ended up interviewing them, and this person had no work experience at all. They'd literally just finished studying. The only professional experience they had was contributing to GitLab in a really informal capacity. And they passed their technical interview for an engineering role, which was awesome. So that is a really easy example of someone who was just contributing and doing all these things because they love doing it, and it kind of turned into an interview with us, which is awesome. Excuse me. And the final thing is writing blogs and being active in the community. So again, it doesn't need to be writing a blog. It could be making a video. It could just be commenting on stuff. It could be jumping on Stack Overflow and answering even the most basic of questions, but just slowly becoming more known in the community, even asking questions and having conversations with people online, super big thing, and will all help build your network. Next clip, thank you very much. Now your foot's in the door and you've actually got an interview. Again, these may seem like super basic things, but I've talked to many people as recent as yesterday where they didn't prepare properly for the interview, and also didn't present their skills in the best way because of the lack of preparation. So things I would recommend you think about or focus on prior to going into the interview to prepare for it properly is know the company values. Have a look at their website. GitLab, we have everything in our handbook. So we're maybe an exceptional case where you can learn as much as you really want to know about GitLab. You want to know is there. But have a look at the company values. Check out the website. Know what they do. Know who you're meeting. Check out their LinkedIn. Excuse me. Check out their LinkedIn. Have a look at their background. You can even derive some questions from that if you wanted to talk to them about their career progression or how they grew from the position you're going to be in and how they kind of grew from that point, whether it be the same company or a different one. Think of some relevant examples or hypotheticals. At your stage in your career, it's unlikely you will have real world examples of how you've worked with big engineering teams or how you solved conflict with a colleague. But what you might have are examples of where you've been in your personal life and there's been a conflict with someone in a sporting team or a musical group or a gaming team or whatever it might be. Those examples are still hyper relevant to what we do in a professional and commercial world. People say the same. It's just what you do is what changes. And if you haven't come across scenarios, then you can Google some hypothetical questions and come up with some hypothetical answers. How would you approach a certain situation, or how would you do something if it came up? Practice a structured method for answering behavioral questions. This is a huge one where people don't prepare to answer questions in a really structured way. And during an interview, it's obviously a pretty high pressure environment. People get muddled up. They're thinking of all these different things. I do it, even personally. I do it sometimes when I'm trying to explain something and I have to stop, take a step back, and then start again in a more structured approach. We here follow the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, result, but clearly articulating what the situation was, what you needed to do, what the action you took was, and then what your result ended up being. There's a very easy way to clearly articulate what you did in a certain scenario. And the final one is be curious. Have a bunch of questions for them. Interviews are not just about them interviewing you anymore. I'm sure you all know the market is very active. There's a lot of flux at the moment and a lot of volatility with the market, generally speaking, in this current time. However, it is just as much about you interviewing them as it is about them interviewing you. So make sure that you go in knowing what support they're going to give you when you're starting out with them, what their expectations are, and making sure that you know what support they're going to give you, but also what they need from you. Next one, please. Thank you. Last bits of advice. If you take nothing else from today, which is okay, that's cool too. But if you take nothing else away from today, I would really hope you take these three things. If I look back on my career, these three things are things that I wish someone had told me back when I was starting out. And even now, I still try and be mindful of and practice. Don't be afraid to be yourself. Ultimately, you're going to be building a personal connection, and these people are hiring you for who you are and not for what you know. So yes, all the stuff you're studying and what you know is great, but don't be afraid to show a bit of yourself and show a bit of personality. I don't know if anyone is a movie buff or likes the movie Coach Carter or has seen the movie Coach Carter, but in there is a quote about someone's biggest fear, and I'm going to paraphrase this massively and probably butcher it, but basically what they say is, by you being yourself gives other people the power to do the same. I try and live by that, so I would highly recommend you be yourself, and you'll be amazed at the results you get out of that. Be patient. It is sometimes hard to find the role that makes you happy, and it is also very tempting to just jump and chase the shiniest thing or the newest role, or a company will reach out to you probably all the time once you're working, because it's ridiculous out there at the moment. I do it for a living, so I know. But people will always be dangling really shiny things in front of you and trying to tell you the grass is greener on the other side. Please don't always listen to that. Be patient and just take things into account and know that things will come as they meant to come. And finally is be confident and persevere. Not knowing something or failing is fine. It's going to happen multiple times. It happens to me probably every week. Happens all the time. Don't be afraid of that. There's nothing to worry about. Just be confident, keep going, and I promise you, you'll get there at some point in the future. That is me done. If you have, similar to PJ, if you have questions after the fact, you can drop me a line on LinkedIn. Very easy to find, Riley Smith or Riley B. Smith. You just put that up to LinkedIn, I'll come straight up. Otherwise, that's me. Thank you very much.
Oh gosh, my camera turned off. Okay, Riley, I'm so glad you were able to come and do this. Like, I really am super excited that we were able to do this together. And all of that advice is definitely advice I wish I had when I was younger. But even when I was transitioning into tech and changing careers and moving in, it's stuff that I was fortunate to be hearing from my mentors. They were like, hey, just keep working and know that it's not always your technical skills that's going to get you in, because a lot of people have similar technical skills. It's going to be you're who's getting hired. If your skills are all that was needed, they wouldn't want you. They would want someone who just has those skills and doesn't have a personality. So this was fantastic advice. I mean, I'm going to save this presentation personally.
Well, I was going to ask you if you could create me a bot, so we're even.
That's right. So we have it open for questions. I can't see the chat because it's telling me that chat and channel meetings is only available to team members, and I think I'm technically a guest. But if there are any questions, I'm sure we can find a way to get questions in. I might even make y'all tweet questions at me.
Hi, PJ and Riley. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very impressive and interesting things that you guys touched on. I have one question. I'll be teaching capstone next quarter, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. And I was wondering if you guys have any open source projects that you think would be good starting points for students to get involved in. We'll be
That's a great question.
advocating FOSS and HFOSS open source projects. But if you guys have anything else you think might be good starting points.
I am not a member of, but I've started working with recently a group called that has an event called Posse, which is, I think, positive open source education. But the whole point is it's a group of educators, higher education educators, who want to do more to bring open source into the classroom. And I have my notes from talking with them somewhere. I just need a second to find them. And then I'll be able to tell you some open source stuff that's great for students and educators. 1 second.
I've attended that workshop, PJ.
Yes, they're so good.
Yeah, they are really good. They are really good. But those are on their open source projects, right? Internal. Anything in GitLab that you guys think would be good for our students to get involved in?
We have a list of open source projects at GitLab. And I just need to find it.
While PJ's finding that, the other thing I'd also recommend is this person I gave as an example. He's based in Italy, I think he was. He was just contributing to the package. He's one of the biggest contributors to the package part of the product. But I've also had candidates where, like, after I've talked to them, they've gone in and literally just submitted a merge request for a typo in the handbook that they found as they were reading through a bunch of info. So even doing little things like that, while it's not contributing to the engineering component, will get you used to how to even submit merge requests, do it, get your name in front of companies like GitLab. Don't need to be massive, monumental changes every time.
Yeah, we accept contributions to our docs as well. And even something simple as finding typos for a student, especially, that's great practice in just making a merge request. I remember the first time I contributed to something on GitHub, it took me about 30 minutes to figure out just how to make a PR over there. And my first time doing a merge request at GitLab, it was the same thing. Sometimes the barrier is the method of contribution. And so learning how to do that is a skill to develop. So even if it's, looking in the docs and making it clearer, or finding typos, or if you know front end, like if you know any Ruby, especially, you can contribute to the project. But finding a good way, I just realized a good way to find it is to search in the issues for good for first timers is a label that we actually have in GitLab. And I'm going to find that, and I'm going to share that real quick with y'all. Let me mute real quick and do some finding.
So what I'm hearing you, PJ, and Riley say is that I don't need to be an expert in coding or any other field to be able to contribute to open source projects. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I did get your email, PJ. I'll share that with all of our students. Thank you, guys.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I have a question next after they get done talking.
Yeah, let me real quick just say, like, it's going to feel like you need to be an expert, and you're going to put a lot of pressure on yourself to be an expert when you're looking for things to contribute to. And this is true for everybody. Even right now, I was talking with someone today, and I was like, I get nervous talking about contributions because I'm bad at it, and I'm not good enough to contribute. And my friend was like, you work at GitLab, right? Like, you made it. You're doing well. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not good at that. And, like, I talked bad about myself immediately. It's important to remember that it's going to feel like it's out of your reach, and you have to differentiate between this project is something I know nothing about. Like, if someone was like, hey, we're writing in Go, I'd be like, I don't know Golang, I can't help you. But if someone was like, we're doing this front end stuff, I'm like, okay, I've done front end, let me look. And it might feel like a stretch, but that stretch is really good for you. Next question. Thank you.
I guess this is a question for both of you, because you mentioned the behavioral interviewing is a technique that you use. So in your experience, how much time would you recommend, time and effort you would recommend that people invest in developing their behavioral interviewing skills and ability to talk about themselves without what you just experienced, what you just shared, PJ, about putting yourself down?
It's a really good question. Do you want to go first, PJ? Do you want me to go first?
I think you've got the more experience with why people need to be confident.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a one size fits all answer, quite honestly. Even now, when I was preparing for my interviews with GitLab, I was preparing and I interview people for a living. But I needed to take a good couple of hours to prepare. What I would recommend is you can Google some behavioral questions. You might not get the same ones in an interview, but it will get your brain thinking in the way that you need to. But what I would recommend is Google some behavioral questions, practice some answers, and then get someone to do a role play interview with you. See how it feels. See how it feels, and then just iterate on your answers from that point. There's a fine line between kind of being confident and talking about what you have achieved and then kind of what you've done within a team. But it's very hard to find that line until you actually start talking through things. You'd be like, I could have done this better. I could have said this better. and just keep practicing until you're like, cool, you might nail it on the first time. And if you do, you're very lucky and much better than I am at answering these questions. But if you don't, that's okay. Just the more time you put into it, the better. But role playing would be my absolute biggest recommendation. If you don't have someone to role play with, record a video, have the questions in front of you and start answering them that way. And then you can, I find it really cringy, but watch myself back. But yeah, you can even do that.
When I was a student teacher, they recorded us teaching, and I had to watch it back with an assistant. So I was getting my master's in education, and I was watching it back with the TA, and they were looking at me, and they're like, "What are you doing with your leg?" And every time I turned to address a new group of kids, my leg would like swing around and like flail a little. And I was like, "Do I do that all the time?" She was like, "PJ, you've done it like 6 times while teaching these 11th graders." And I was like, oh no. And I stopped doing it because I became conscious of it. So yeah, recording yourself is cringy and watching yourself back is like, oh, what am I doing? Oh, do I always sweat this much? Oh my gosh. But really useful because you'll find how are you coming across and how can you improve that? And on top of role playing with some friends, if you've got a bunch of people who, if you're in your senior year graduating, you're going to see some familiar faces in some of the classes you've taken. Get a couple of people together, 5 or 6 of you, order some food, hang out, and practice interviewing each other. And it's really, really beneficial. The number one indicator of success in testing, in interviews, in anything is familiarity with the environment in which you're going to be doing it. So becoming familiar with what it's like to sit in front of someone and answer questions and know that feeling of I need to not impress this person, but make sure they see the best side of me in my answers. Doing that over and over makes it familiar and keeps you from being as nervous as you might be if you just went in and were like, all right, let's do this. Here's my portfolio. I built the website. It's cool. So that role play and with other people, it feels like a safer space. Like, 5 seniors that are all trying to get their first job. You're all kind of on an equal playing field there. You're all about to get the same piece of paper that says, BS in computer science, BS in information systems. You guys are peers and you guys are colleagues if you want to be. And again, that can strengthen some relationships that may help you in the future. You never know when 10 years down the line, someone's like, hey, we graduated at City U together. And I remember when we were doing those mock interviews and when we had that class on, algorithms, I thought of you because this position opened up over here. That's the kind of connection that's really important later on. I don't even know if I answered the question. I feel like I just wanted to talk about a time I was embarrassed in grad school.
You answered the question. It's basically what you're saying is it's truly all about the relationships that you build. Starting
100%.
Starting now. Yeah.
I would not be at GitLab were it not for my openness to trying new things and creating relationships with people that I want to connect with. I started coding because a friend of mine said, I think you could learn to code. And I'd never heard that in my life. I was an English teacher before this. And I thought it took someone who was really good at math to code. And when they said, oh, I think you could do this, it was a friend that I trusted. So I said, all right, I'll try it. And I tried out some C# and I liked it. And from there, I started meeting people that friend knew. And I started meeting other people and I made some amazing relationships. And it culminated in someone saying, hey, I've seen you streaming on Twitch with Chloe, who's a friend of mine who's currently between jobs, but formerly Microsoft, formerly Century.io, formerly, I forget where else, formerly Coinbase. And they were like, I've seen you doing stuff with Chloe. I think you might be interested in this position. So my friendship with someone led to another connection, led to them saying, hey, have you considered GitLab? And I was like, what's GitLab? And the rest is history. And that brings me to you today. So relationships are super important.
Thank you very much, guys. Does anybody else have any questions or anything for PJ or Riley?
Hey, this is Jerome. Quick question for PJ and Riley, I guess. But I gotta say, first of all, very impressed with the presentation and learned so much here. So thank you for taking the time. I'm really interested in those bots. And can you make like a Facebook bot and like a LinkedIn bot? Like, I didn't even know that, you know, that stuff existed. Like, I knew about bots, but I didn't know you could do those types of things. Like, the Viva bots that you had. How do you can you do that with Facebook and LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff? Or what are some other use cases that you could use these bots for?
Another popular place to put them is Discord. And really anything that has an API that lets you use code to make the app or program do something, there's a way to build a bot for it. And I always have to explain to people, I used to do this presentation, I'd be like, I make Twitter bots, but not the kind that threaten democracy, the kind that make you laugh and are happy. Because a lot of times when you think of a bot, it's like pretending to be a person. I am fully transparent that Taking Bot Sunday, that tweets Taking Back Sunday videos at people, is not a real person. I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not. But anything that's got an API, you can take that API and you can build something that uses that API to do something that no one else is doing. A really cool thing is Spotify has a bunch of great ideas for their APIs. If you search Spotify API, they have a bunch of tutorials about how to build cool things using the Spotify API. People have used the Spotify API combined with a Microsoft machine learning algorithm to where you can give it a picture of a face, it analyzes the face for emotion, and then suggests a song based on the emotion it got from that face. So it's very different from the 50 lines of code that make Shania bot work. But yeah, anything with an API is out there, and working with APIs is a great boost to any resume. If you can be like, oh, I work with APIs and have worked with documentation, and that's a sign of someone who is doing more than just classwork. And that's a sign of someone who's doing more than just what they're told to. They're going off and trying something on their own and learning and having that initiative that Riley talked about. But yeah, the Facebook and LinkedIn, in my brain, it feels harder because Twitter's like, we want you to build stuff. Here's the API. But I'm sure there's ways to build stuff on Facebook too. Automate stuff and have it where, it puts a status up every hour about, where you're at. I mean, maybe that's a little creepy. You don't want people following you like that. But yeah, once there's an API, you can build anything. And there's tons of tutorials out there. I learned to build Twitter bots because I typed how to build a Twitter bot. And I found an article and a YouTube video.
Ooh, thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I guess we're good to go. You guys are in Florida time, so time to take a beer and chill a little.
Yeah, Riley still has to work today, but it's 8:30 for me, so I'm gonna have a seltzer and play some Nintendo Switch. It's gonna be a good night, I think. Thank you so much for having us, Ollie. Thank you for reaching out to me, and thank you everyone for attending. If you have any questions that you think of later, please feel free to message Riley on LinkedIn, message me on Twitter, or find me on Twitch and follow me and scream at me in the comments when I'm streaming, trying to build a Python drum machine or whatever I'm gonna do. But happy to meet any of y'all, and hit us up. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
PJ, and
Wonderful
hope to see you on the
presentation.
next 60.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.